And you are once again welcome today, whatever the time is, in your location. And we're going to be listening to Aylin Unaldi in a minute. But first of all, I want to take a tour, basically, and take you on a tour about what we have been doing in our Canvas page. Okay, so this in our course, basically, this week was all about reading assessment, listening assessment, and the way technology is used in that. And Aylin's talk is going to very nicely complement those aspects, I hope. And I decided not to share the screen right now. Maybe we can take a look at it in the end. And Antonios, can you please introduce our speaker?
Yes, of course. Aylin Unaldi is senior lecturer at the University of Huddersfield, England, United Kingdom. Um, she's an important person doing research in the field of applied linguistics and linguistics. She published several articles in important journals. I think that's enough. I don't know if you want to add something, Asli.
No.
We're very happy you are with us, Aylin. So I'm going to leave the floor to you. Looking forward to listening to you. Ladies and gents, Aylin aldı.
Yay! Thank you very much. After this introduction, perhaps I should start singing or something. Felt like an important person. Thank you very much, Antonios. That was a great introduction. Thanks a lot. And it's great to be talking to you guys and, teachers from all around the world who are keen to improve themselves, who are interested in language testing, an area which is usually hated most by most practitioners, because it's kind of seen as like a mystery. I see that there are quite esteemed colleagues among the audience. I should say that I prepared my talk to practitioners, to language teachers who actually have only basic idea about language assessment, and reading is a little bit of a boring area as well. So I thought, looking at the details of it, looking at question types, looking at skills might help teachers or teacher candidates, if there are any among us, in looking at reading assessment in a more professional, from a more knowledgeable aspect. So I apologize if my talk is going to be very basic for you. I see Olga there. Olga, I think we should be just meeting for a beer or wine rather than this talk, but it's great to have you here too. So, therefore, I'm going to be starting with some hands-on reading experience with you guys. Let me just share my screen first. I apologize for the untidiness of my desktop. If ever you see it, I'm just doing some research at the moment. So, I have 1 zillion different types of folders all on my desktop. I might look like a crazy to you, I guess. Okay, so we are going to be looking at what and how of reading assessment. Even the title should suggest that the talk will be basic. What can we assess in terms of reading comprehension, and how should we design our questions? What should the focus of our questions be like? Yeah, what reading skills are, how they are defined, and how we can design reading comprehension questions that tap on those skills. Knowing the kinds of different reading skills and establishing focus in each question and being aware of that focus might help us design reading assessment that is comprehensive of several skills, assess different levels of comprehension so that our assessment can be more valid. In a way, in order to ensure validity, you know, all of us know what reliability is, but when it comes to validity, we are kind of, you know, like, what is validity? How can we calculate it? Actually, we don't calculate validity, we establish it. And one way of doing is actually knowing what we are testing in our tests. Therefore, defining skills, knowing what skills are, how they are different from each other, and what sort of reading processes they trigger is essential to establish validity in our tests. Therefore, I find this level of knowledge quite important for all of us, really. Okay, so before we start, you know, actually, before we start, this is what we are going to do. I'm going to just send you a text, okay? And I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to give you a limited time, and I'd like to ask you to answer that question. I'm not going to ask your responses. I'm not going to check whether you have answered them correctly or not. You don't need to give me the answers. That's not my purpose. But what I want you to pay attention to is what happens when you need to answer that question in a given time. What sort of you know, like reading processes you go through. Okay, so please do pay attention to what you have tried to accomplish in response to each question and how much of the text you have read, which parts of the text you have read, and the speed with which you read the text and how much you have understood the text. Okay, so if the conditions permit, I think Aslı can give you permission to speak, and then I would appreciate it if you could just contribute with your answers. That would, we are not a huge group. I think we should be able to do that, right, Aslı? Okay, now let me just I need to stop sharing and find the folder and send it to you in chat. Okay. All right, I'll try again. It jumped back. Oh, no. Okay, let me try again. It happens. I mean, all of us work with 10 different environments, I guess. Just let me know when you receive it. Okay, you have received the text. All right, don't read it. Don't read it yet. Okay, super. Okay, please do open it. And however, your first task is this. Okay, this is the text. And you have 30 seconds to understand what the text is about. Okay, start looking at the text. Allow yourselves 30 minutes and just tell me what the text is about, and I'll time you. Okay, stop, please. Anyone who would like to share with us how you have read the text, what you have understood, and the speed with which you have read the text? Could you just raise your hands if you want to contribute? Yes, Olga, please.
Yes, I had to be like a flash because I was unable to cover the whole text in 30 seconds. But at least I realized that the gist is about the conflict that the refugees have to face in
Yeah.
their private life or autonomous private
Okay.
life.
How did you get that? What parts of the text did you pay attention to? Do you remember?
Well, actually, I started with the introduction
Aha.
because the introduction usually contains the main idea of the text. And
All
then
right. So you knew that introduction is a tricky part, really. Yeah.
yes, well, and then I proceeded to the central part of it. I just had to catch 2 paragraphs, not more.
Uh-huh. Okay. Very good. Thank you very much. So the introduction was there. It gave you the idea. You knew that the introduction would be helpful to you. And then you read just bits and pieces from the paragraph. Anyone else? Thank you very much, Olga. Anyone else who would like to just contribute? I think we have messages in the chat. Yeah. All right, okay. I skimmed it. Tamari says, what do you mean by skimming, really? And someone says diagonal reading. I'd like to hear if you would like to share what these means. What do they include? Skimming or diagonal reading. It's a very fast reading. Yeah, paying attention to headings, title. All right, okay, the general idea gist. So how do we actually form the general idea? We know where to look at the text, and it seems that we are looking similar places to understand it, right? Okay, great. Let's go on to the second task. You again have 30 seconds to find the answer to this question. What did the extreme right do in 1930s? Again, your time starts now. Yes. Okay. What did we do in this time? Was it similar to what we did to the first one? Yeah, that's an easy one. Come on, girls. Come on, guys.
Well, okay, let me do it again. This time
All
I
right.
scanning. So I was going by the signal actually, 1930s. Well, so and actually that was a reading to search or search reading for to locate the preset information.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much again, Olga. You're a very good student. You'll pass this exam. Okay. You were actually looking for a signal. 1930. Probably all of you were doing the same thing because you as readers and as test takers, quite experienced test takers, we know that that is the key information, and we need to find it in the text. But because we know that it's a number, we did not actually do as much reading as we did for the first one. Our reading was more directed to the keyword. The keyword was found, and probably, we read just a sentence around this 1930. So how do we name this? More specifically, we will be just talking about that. However, when we compare what we did for the first one and the second one, we did quite different things. Our strategies were different. Oops, sorry. And our the amount of information we read and processed was different. The speed was different. And the purpose was different. So this difference is important in describing and naming the reading skills correctly, I suppose. Okay, let me go on to the next one. The next one is a collection of 3 questions. Imagine that you have these in the exam, all right, and you have 3 minutes to answer all these questions. Okay, let's see what you're doing. These are a little bit more tricky. Mm-hmm. Can you find the answers? Yes, the 3 minutes is over for this task. And I wonder whether you have been able to find questions, the answers to 3 questions. Just, I'm not going to ask for answers again. Just raise your hands with the little symbols there, or use the thumb up if you could actually find the answers, or you think you found the answers for the 3 questions. Okay, one question is that when you read the question, how did you start reading? Did you start reading the text from the beginning and read all throughout till the end? Probably no, right? Because you know that, again, your time is limited and the questions are many, and you need to find the answer to the question in an economic way, right? So these questions were not as easy as the first ones, like 1930 question, for example. You didn't have a clear clue. With the first one, maybe you had proper word there, Islamic. So probably you searched for Islamic there. However, it's all over the text and there's not only one of it. So things were more complicated and that wasn't a clear signal. And you needed to find the specific answer, unlike the first question, right? So what you did, you understood the question probably and looked for a part that could be relevant for the question. You used all the clues possible, right? Like Islamic, and read around Islamic to see whether like something that something needs to be hidden from other things, etc. Right? And you focused on specific keywords like deviations, like culture, like concealed, but you couldn't find exact matches in the text. What you needed to do is to see whether a part of the text was semantically closer to these concepts, whether that part of the text included semantically closer synonyms or related words. So instead of concealed, for example, when you have seen hidden there, right? And then you started thinking that yes, this part is talking about something needs to be hidden for something else. Let me just read around this part. And yes, family and community is the right answer. Congratulations to the ones who have given the right answer. And probably if you well, however, with the second one, I think this was much more difficult because again, the keywords were more hidden, they were more difficult to identify, and there wasn't really one-to-one match with the text. You needed to understand the question, and you quickly needed to understand which paragraph was talking about what, so that you could quickly look for the answer there. And with the third one, probably, yeah, instead of a keyword, Didam Kurt is writing in the third one, instead of a keyword, looking for a process described would be a better idea. So that the looking for a process, again, the search is not like the search in the first one and in the second one, right? It's a different kind of search. It's a search for concept, it's search for relevance, it's a search for content rather than simple matching. Okay. So what do we name this skill as? We're going to be talking about this soon, after we understand the differences. Okay, how about this task? I'm not going to ask you to do that, but what sort of a skill needed for this task? Now read the text carefully and write a short summary of it in 5 minutes. You may take notes only. So in this task, if we did it, I would just simply allow you to write a summary, and while writing the summary, to pay attention to what? Okay, I'll give you a few minutes. Again, imagine that now you need to read the text and you need to write a summary of it. Do you pay attention to specific parts of the text? Do you extract information from specific parts of the text? And why do you do so? Right, I'll just give you 2 minutes to think about this. Just try to create a mental summary, and then I will appreciate it if you could just contribute with your answers. Okay, 2 minutes is over. I have taken very good answers here. Thank you very much. A new colleague and an old PhD student of mine is writing lines from her PhD thesis too. So, hi, Burju. Yeah, reading for main ideas and reading into writing. And what we pay attention to is, again, what we did actually was not like looking for an answer. Now we said there's no answer to this question. Actually, I need to construct the answer myself. So let me just process the text from the beginning to the end again. Let me go in a more linear way and look for important information that I can extract from the text. So compared to second and third questions, the level was different. This was more like the first question, in the sense that we processed the whole text. We needed to look at everywhere in the text. We were not looking for something, right? However, the depth of reading in comparison to the first one was much more deeper. The depth was deeper. You don't say that, but it was, like reading was deeper, comprehension were deeper. We was deeper. We were kind of trying to differentiate what is important, what is not important, what idea to take, what idea not to take. So this was obviously a summarizing skill that required much more reading than anything else, understanding the text at the whole level, at the whole text level, right? Okay, so imagine that you have such a question. The question says, this is an excerpt from the text. It says, read the excerpt taken from a text in 1932 by an observer. What would you write in reaction to the ideas he defended, especially the ones on the negative impacts of immigration on French society? Write in short note form. This is an extract taken from the text you have looked at, but now you need to do something else. What is different what is the difference between fourth task and the fifth task? Let me give you like 2 minutes to read this part and just again form an idea in your mind. Mhm, mhm. Mhm. Very good answers, everybody. Right. It's not summarizing, it's not just reading, it goes beyond reading. Some of the answers suggest, yes, it includes understanding, understanding the ideas, but also integrating whatever we know about the issue, whatever we think about the issue, and writing an argumentation against one argument. So here, understanding the text is not enough, but you integrate heavily from your background, right? Interpretation is necessary, inferencing is necessary, and argumentation is also necessary. All right. Okay. However, when we say integration of skills, do we, I mean, if we need to write, of course, we need to integrate reading and writing. But in terms of reading, I think there is a heavy integration of background knowledge with the text and comparing background knowledge, already existing knowledge, with whatever available in the text to go beyond it. Okay. And another task, let's look at this. Okay, now we are going to read another excerpt from another text. And its title is Stop Telling Immigrants to Be French and Let It Happen, Help It Happen. In order to find a support for your disagreement with the observer in the main text, right? And how could you use this text to support your ideas for the task in the for task 5? Okay, take a quick look at the text. Let's see. Let's imagine that you want to use this text in order to accomplish task 5. What are you doing? How are you reading? Oops, sorry, I'm sorry. I hope I'm sharing again, Asla.
Yes, it works, Aylin.
Okay, sorry, I was just trying to open the chat box, but it disappeared. I just clicked on somewhere else. Okay, so how is reading this text different from reading the previous text? You read a text here, you read it carefully, but your mind worked differently. What was the difference?
You evaluate the information against the opinion presented in the previous text. And so
Exactly. Who was talking, by the way?
Olga.
Who? Olga again, my best student. Yes, there was a constant comparison of information. You had some proposition, some sentence, some idea in your mind from the previous text that you wanted to compare with the information here, so that you judge whether the information here or which part of the information can be used against the idea in the previous text. So you were actually keeping both the old text in mind and reading the new text, always making comparison, building links between the two. So this was actually some task which was beyond simple reading, beyond simple reading a paragraph and understanding the main idea in it. You were doing something more cognitively demanding. And somebody in this, in Mohammed, I guess, in the chat box wrote, are these cognitive skills? These are definitely cognitive skills, because we know that reading is a cognitive skill, and it might require little thinking, little processing. And in certain tasks like this one, it might require much more sophisticated thinking and integration of information, either from background or from across texts. Okay, so I mean, the things that we talked about are related with speed, with which we read, and the amount of comprehension we produced. In fact, you know, the depth of understanding, how much of the text we understood, and how much information we used, and whether the text was processed at an overall level, or certain parts of the text are processed, or we process the texts selecting the different parts or not. We talked about this as well, and we talked about amount of information that must be kept in mind while reading. And we talked about combination of different types of processes while reading. For example, in the second question, in 1930s question, we said we just found the word without reading anything else. So we were not actually reading the text, but we were looking for a specific number there. And when we found the number, we read around it. So we combined a very rapid reading with a little bit of a slower reading. With the third task questions, deviations, the historical one, immigration one, we read the text very quickly, but unlike scanning, we needed to process in more depth, trying to understand relevance and everything. And we sometimes, look through the paragraphs, all the paragraphs, to see whether there are relevant concepts there or not. Okay. Right, the amount and type of already existing knowledge on the content type of the text we are reading, what we need to do in order to complete the task. For example, this one was very apparent in the first one, when you needed to understand what the text was about. You said that I read the first sentences. Somebody said, I read the headline, subheading, subtitles. Olga said, I read the introduction, because there's usually key information here. All these are our already existing information about text structure, and where we can find certain information. We approach the text with this information in mind. All right, and we talked about the amount and type of information we need to integrate within or across texts, or with background information, in order to perform the tasks. So all these definitions actually define and differentiate reading skills from each other as cognitive skills. All right, so basically we know that reading is a rapid process. It is an interactive process, and it's a strategic process, and it's also a learning process, which means that at the end we do go away with some kind of information from the text. Actually, just with a quick look, I was talking on a framework by Khalifa Anwar about reading levels, reading types, and reading purposes. I'm not going to go over this, but interested audience can just look at this and see how different kinds of reading is defined, starting from word level reading, sentence level reading, across sentences level reading, text level reading, and eventually across texts level reading. I proudly say that I made Cyril Ware add this little box on top of his framework myself, because my area of interest on reading is reading across texts, which once upon a time was not recognized as a different reading skill, but it is now. And there's a very accelerated research on multiple text reading, because it has been very clear that reading a text in combination with another text actually requires a different process and a much more sophisticated process, as we have just experienced. Okay, on a simpler and older framework, actually Urquhart and Ware define these skills, and I would like to just make a quick reference to this. So in terms of level, we talk about global level and local level. Global level meaning beyond sentence levels, across sentences, across paragraphs, texts, and across texts is a kind of global skill. And when we think about the first question, it is a skimming question, but it is not done carefully. It is done expeditiously, searching for information that could be useful to us. So skimming is defined as expeditious global reading, or expeditious reading at global level. This is in quite a big contrast with scanning, because scanning is a very local level skill, where we simply find one specific information and just read around that information. One biggest mistake we always do is to put together skimming and scanning, because they make not a nice phrase like a sing song, skim and scan, I'm skimming and scanning, but they are very different and very different level reading processes. Skimming is a global level, textual level, fast reading, whereas scanning is a very local level, very focused reading that requires very little careful reading afterwards. So looking for symbols, names, etc. is scanning. However, understanding the gist of a text is skimming, and I advise you not to put these two together unless you do them both. You don't scan when you skim, for example, just to keep in mind. And we said reading carefully at global level when we need to read and understand a whole sentence, a whole paragraph, or when we need to read and understand a whole text, or when we need to combine information from large chunks from two texts. We are talking about careful reading at global level. However, there is careful reading at local level that is when we process one sentence, usually, or just slightly more than a sentence, to understand the idea, not the main idea, the idea. So local level careful reading questions are usually geared to understanding the syntactic relations within a text, vocabulary items within a sentence, and understanding it in detail. So later on, in Khalifa and Weir, we have a more umbrella term that covers all expeditious reading skills in it, which is called search reading. Expeditious reading, including skimming, scanning, and a search reading, with the skill we used for the third task, when we do not have any clues to look for, when we cannot really match the question with the text easily. However, when we need to do content search based on semantic relatedness of certain concepts, understanding the relevance of the part of the text to our predetermined goals. This is called search reading. It is quite different from skimming in the sense that we don't process the whole text. It is quite different from scanning, in the sense that our search is much wider. It's not limited to looking for predetermined, like names and symbols and everything. There's not much help. And the search is done semantically rather than based on the mere matching of keywords in the text and the question. Okay, so the first task was a skimming task. The second one was a scanning task, and you can tell the difference between the two. And the third is a search reading task. And the fourth is a careful reading at global level task. And 5 is again global level the integration task, and 6 is multiple documents or across documents reading task. Okay, do we have time We have 46 minutes. I think I need to stop here, I guess. I mean, if we had time, I would just, work with you on different types of questions. But if I have 2 more minutes, I'd like to show different types of questions here. I mean, you wouldn't understand the questions because we don't have time to read this text, but very quickly, what is this text about? Skimming question. A typical skimming question is, what is this text about? What can the information in this text be helpful for? For what purpose can we use this text? Or, what are the main points? What are discussed in the text? What do you expect to find in this text? Or matching the headings with the paragraphs these are typical skimming questions. Search reading questions, as we said, more subtle. They do send you to parts of the text, but you don't need to read the whole text. They are usually in a given mixed order, and you have clues, but the clues are usually semantically related words or concepts. For example, here it talks about body language and words, but the text talks about, let me show you if I can find it. I think it comes later on, never mind. I was going to send this text to you too, but we don't have time for that. Okay, and these are careful reading questions, but they are at sentence level, which means that only reading one sentence would be enough to read this question. For example, 8 question is a typical question that would lead you to scan for the name first, and when you find the name, you read the surrounding sentence and you find the answer there. Again, for example, the 10th question, like, referencing questions require you to read and understand references within a text, which means that, like identifying syntactic categories in the text, or given a basic span of a text, finding the synonym of a word would be, again, careful reading at local level. And questions that would require you to go beyond single sentence are named as careful reading across sentence levels. And as we said, the summaries, text level comprehension questions are the most difficult to design and to assess, and usually summaries, like summarization or choosing the best summary, etc., would be typical questions at that level. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you very much for your attendance. I think we would just accept questions now, if there is anyone who would like to ask a question, I guess. Yeah, over to you, Aslı.
Thank you so very much, Aylin, for a very informative and, nicely put presentation. And so I would like to ask our audience, if you want, you can type your questions in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and direct your questions to our speaker. For example, do you use cross-textual kind of tasks in your local context when you assess reading?
Very good question. Do we do, like comparison of information across texts? It seems that everybody has had enough. Thank you very much for your contributions, and thank you very much for attending, and thank you very much for thanking me for this presentation. It's been my pleasure. And thank you, Aslı and Ece, and all the team that has made this possible for all of us, I guess.
Thank you so very much. Tonight, Ece was not with us, unfortunately, but I'm sure she's going to be viewing the recording. and she will be a little bit upset because our audience let you go without any questions, but still, yeah. And I would like to go back to our course, just to remind you, this week, in week 2, we've been busy with assessment of reading and assessment of listening. We had related tasks to it. And if you haven't been able to go over these tasks, maybe after listening to Aylin's talk, it may give you some inspiration, more ideas, to respond to task 1, which discusses components, principles of reading assessment. And in task 2, we are asked basically about the principles enclosed in listening assessment. And then we discuss role of educational technology in reading and listening. I really wish that we have more time, Aylin. There are, tons of stuff to talk about. And of course, one of the discussion topics was improving reliability and validity in use of reading and in use of listening assessment tasks. And when we design reading tasks, if there are open-ended questions or cross reading kind of questions in which readers are compare and contrast information, scoring can be a little bit challenging. Do you have any advice for that, Aylin?
Yes, actually, this is the project I'm working on now, like multiple documents reading or reading across texts as a reading skill. How can it be assessed independent of writing? Actually, I'm trying to design a task myself as well, where questions can be answered by copying and pasting parts from texts rather than writing, for example. On a technological environment, on an online environment, actually, this can be done. Also, multiple choice is always an alternative, although not the best ones. For example, a test used in America, SAT test, uses multiple choice, multiple text questions. And certain innovative tasks can be designed. In fact, open-ended questions are great, but they are not really very good at higher level reading tasks. So we should be open to like mixing and matching different types of questions within the same assessment. I'm always for it. Like item format is not a must. It's a secondary thing in reading assessment. What is important is the skill that you want to test and the amount of reading that the types of processes that you want to trigger with that task. And you can choose any item format that can go with this one. Like a question in a text can be open-ended question with 1 or 2 word answers. It can be a multiple choice text. It can be copy and paste task. And it can be a writing task if you would like to have. So with bigger tasks, with more challenging tasks, you can change the item format and use one suitable for yourself. For example, one idea I'd like to see whether it's working or not is, looking different texts and choosing sentences that would be opposing to each other or that would be supporting each other, or tasks that like send the reader to certain paragraphs and then asking the reader the relation between the paragraph, whether the 2 is supporting each other or whether the one is giving an example to the other, or whether one is opposing the other, or whether one is explaining the cause of the other, etc. So these textual links can also be operationalized in simple, straightforward, multiple choice type of questions as well.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, students are gonna love that. But isn't it even better, sometimes asking A, B, or C, it's kind of innovative. And thank you very much. It's kind of inspirational because in our session next week, we will be focusing on speaking and writing. But the week after, we will be designing our own assessment tasks, or maybe bringing the own assessment tasks in our own educational context into attention of other colleagues from all around the world. So in week 4 and 5, we'll be sharing, and it would be very interesting to see, maybe cross-textual reading tasks or whatever our community is preparing. So, ladies and...
I'm so sorry.
Sure.
There's a question from the audience. Can I shortly answer
Yeah.
it?
Of course, sure.
Yeah, he then says, I am afraid to ask questions that focus on vocabulary because is it a reading question? Actually, yes, it is a reading question, but it is at a very low level. Grammar, syntactic information, syntactic understanding, and lexical understanding are reading skills. These are the skills that underlie all 4 skills anyway, like they are the core enabling skills. As we said, the meaning of finding the synonym of a word in a given passage, for example, is just a vocabulary level reading, but vocabulary is reading anyway, although it's at a very local level. Okay, thank you, Aslı.
And we have another question for you from Zahra. How can we use technology in assessing reading?
Oh, technology is the best thing. Is most suitable for assessing reading, I guess. With the integration of technology, sorry, different types of tasks now have become more easy to design and to assess. One use of technology in reading assessment is controlling the time. For example, in fast reading, like expeditious reading tasks, when the students, you can easily ask a skimming question, and you can make it really a skimming question by limiting the time. Because if you don't limit the time in a skimming task, it can turn into a careful reading task. If a fast reader can read the text and answer the skimming question through processing most of it, then it's not a skimming question anymore. It's not a skimming skill anymore. It's careful reading. So by limiting the time with technology on screen, for example, it's much easier to assess expeditious reading skills like skimming, scanning, and search reading. And with multiple texts easily accessible on screen, for example, it's easier to compare the tasks. Again, with technology, when it is possible to copy and paste texts, you can just bypass the writing element and simply design reading tests, even though there are multiple texts based on reading skills only, and without having to assess writing skills. I'm not saying that integrated skills is a bad idea, not at all, but it's a different skill. So we need to also focus on multiple reading text as reading skill per se. That's what I'm saying. And technology makes it possible. Just imagine a web design, or imagine a design with multiple how do you call that, links, or like tabs to be opened. Multiple texts can easily be processed. Right, I hope I have answered the question.
You have 2 more, one from Shukran Saygı. I don't know if you can read the chat, but she wants to get your opinion about would it be correct to say search reading is a higher level skill than careful reading?
I wouldn't say so. They are different levels of reading. Careful reading, actually, at careful reading, including reading and understanding longer stretches of a text, is the highest skill. I mean, the highest actually reading skill is reading across texts, reading and understanding 2 or 3 texts and integrating information from those. This is the most cognitively challenging, most demanding careful reading reading skill, in which the whole of the text is processed. The more you process a text, the more difficult the reading skill becomes, the higher the reading skill becomes as well. In expeditious reading skills like skimming, search reading, and scanning, we do select the text and process only all of them, only the parts that we select. However, within expeditious reading skills, we could say scanning is the lowest because the least amount of information is processed in it on a sentence level. Then comes search reading, I would say, where the text is, like searched to find the related information, and where, when the reader finds the related paragraph, only processes that paragraph, for example. But if the search reading question is difficult, you may end up searching the whole text anyway. Skimming, I would say, is the highest level of expeditious type of reading, because you actually have to process whole of the text. You have to process the text at global level, and the more detailed it becomes, the higher its level gets. The more information you get from the text, the more sophisticated the skill becomes. For example, what is this text about is an easier search reading question, which requires less processing than what sort of issues are discussed in this text, right? In one, you can have just the general idea. In the other, you have to understand the parts of the text, at least the main ideas within it, right? So the second is a little bit deeper, which means it's a little bit higher in the level. But I wouldn't compare careful reading and search reading in that way. I would just compare levels of careful reading and levels of expeditious reading, because the purposes are different.
Yeah, thank you, Aylin. And the last question is, are there question types that would not go well together, in your opinion? What's your advice on this?
That's a little bit of a difficult question, because it depends on, again, your purpose. Which skill do you want to focus on? But I would say scanning cannot be multiple choice, for example. Oops, I'm so sorry. So sorry, guys.
That's fine. And the questions shouldn't answer each other, probably.
Yes. Right. Okay.
All right, then. Thank you so very much. Moderator team, would you like to say anything? Tomais, Antonio, Sophia, Anna?
Well, I would like to thank you very much. I had a question for the end, a basic one, but I think it is important. My question is, if we really assess the reading skill, if we really isolate the reading skill in a test, since you said, and I agree, the skill development is integrated always. So, what do you think?
Yep, there's a place.
Since I would like to add.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Mm.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm saying that working on certification, on language certification, I see sometimes students doing candidates, not students, doing well in one skill, but not so well in another skill, and this is a bit strange. That's why I'm asking you.
Yeah.
If it is possible to assess.
Yeah, I think there is a place for everything. Imagine how we teach reading skill, for example. Before we could teach basic skills, we can't really teach higher level skills like, you know, integrated reading or into writing, for example. It's a very difficult task. For example, the students first of all need to learn to identify main ideas, for example. This is a reading skill. We need to teach it before we teach a higher one. So although reading is, as you say, a very integrated skill. Why do we read? We always do. We read to do something. I agree with that 100%. And the ideal world, in the ideal world, all skills are integrated in a way. But we have to teach them separately, you know, like at different levels, at different degrees of complexity. And while we are doing it, actually, we need to assess them separately as well. You know, if you think what is the ideal language proficiency, academic language proficiency test, for me, I would say give the students 3 articles and ask them to write an essay on them. That would be the perfect academic purposes assessment. However, it's the end of the tunnel, if you know what I mean, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you
You're
very much. Thank you
welcome.
for all.
Thank
It
you
was
so very
very
much.
interesting.
Thank you very much. I'm glad that you have found something interesting in it. I would be really honored if I could just give you a few interesting ideas.
Thank you so very much, Aylin. Thank you so very much, dear participants, dear audience, for joining us tonight. And I hope that we can, you know, meet you in forums, posts during the in the Canvas platform, and next week, hopefully, in our week 3 webinar. And until then, take care, stay safe. Thank you so very much.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you for attending. Great to see you all. Go bye-bye. And the other guys,
Very
see you
much.
later.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.